Time to show the 21st century how I earned the title of Conqueror.
It's Kang's multiverse, and we're just living in it. Well, I mean, not us, but...
I beg your pardon.
Wait, are we part of the multiverse, and we're just the one without superheroes? That is gonna bug me, man.
I'm so confused.
The MCU is on a collision course with the Kang dynasty as the time-traveling, dimension-hopping conqueror tries to do what Thanos couldn't. Make a victory hold.
Wild.
With all of time and several universes on his conquering CV, he's a big threat. But is he the strongest threat lurking in the Marvel world? Of course not.
You should be concerned about the trouble you're in.
Let's just get Marvel's two-eyed, two-horned, floating purple planet eater out of the way up top. The cosmos has been created and collapsed 7 times for most of the Marvel universe, and an 8th time after a conclave of bad ideas from very powerful people merged to kablooey all of reality. Sometimes beings make it from one cosmos to the next, like Goblin of Ta, who, as the last people of the 6th cosmos, decided to ram the cosmic egg that would become the 7th. Everyone else died, but Goblin didn't. Instead, he got fused with the power cosmic and became Galactus. The cost for Galactus would be an insatiable appetite that has only one prescription: the life force of a planet. Galactus is dripping with the power cosmic, one of the most powerful forces in Marvel. So much so that he can pass them along to his herald to act like his Yelp reviews for the galaxy, finding him tasting planets and telling the people on them the bad news. His power is so immense, he's usually not so much defeated as he is deflected. But, as Mr. Miyagi will tell you, strength isn't everything. One particularly bored Kang from Volume 3 of The Exiles, having conquered his universe only to find himself, as he puts it, the biggest ant on the anthill, did some meditating and not only found a way to defeat Galactus, but to go all strange supreme using his power, along with the power he absorbed from the other universe's Galactuses, to absorb the power of all the Galactuses to become Kang the Time Eater, which is also the title I was given, but that's because I talk too much during meetings. While we're on the subject of beings that are honeycomb big, there's another massive being floating around in space who actually dates all the way back to the first cosmos. Arasham the Judge is a member of the Celestials and the 4th host of the Earth. What all that means is kind of complicated, but the takeaway is that he gets to sit in judgment of the Earth and decide if the whole thing gets to continue. Celestials spark life throughout the multiverse and destroy it to make more Celestials to spark more life. And the one that gets to sit and make that call is Arasham the Judge, the big mad space helmet that was telling the Eternals what to do. When the Eternals decide they kind of like the people on Earth, they halt the emergence of Tiamat. Arasham shows up in the sky to tell Cersei, Phastos, and Kinga that he isn't happy and he will be back to judge the Earth. Being a Celestial and part of the cosmos from the first go-around comes with a heaping helping of power. Much like Galactus, Arasham would not be someone Kang could face with brute force. But if he were to get some of that celestial power, he'd probably do more with it than Peter Quill, who just made a giant rock Pac-Man. In the comics, Ego was someone named Egros, who lived on twin planets around a sun that a being known as the Stranger decided to blow up for some reason. Rude. Egos tried to save his people, but the sun blew up ahead of schedule and no one made it to their bunkers in time. The Stranger had one last thing to do on the way out the door, and that was to moosh every living thing he was about to kill into Egros so he could become Ego, the living planet. In the MCU, Ego is Peter Quill's father, and he tells Quill that he is a Celestial. But then Ego told Quill a lot of things. Comic book Ego became an elder of the universe on account of him being the only one of his kind. The jersey really doesn't matter as much as the power, and as you can imagine, a living planet has a lot of it. Every part of Ego, including his atmosphere, is a living part of him, and he can change all of it at will. He can create beings that deal with invasions and the like he calls antibodies, and he can absorb the energy of beings on him to gain power, something he did to the people he said could live on him as a thank you for helping him fend off a super-hungry Galactus. Rude. Thor has subdued Ego using his storm powers, but outside of that, everyone else has to rely on Ego's weakness that's right there on the tin. His ego. Unfortunately, that's Kang's as well. Celestials seem pretty scary, but this is comics, and there's always someone gnarlier lurking around. Between cosmos, there's nothing. And nothing is exactly how Knull likes things. But then the 7th cosmos started, complete with Celestials, filling the nothing with stuff and people. Knull didn't take kindly to nothingness being gentrified, so he made himself a powerful sword made of living goop and took the head off a Celestial. He then used that head to make the sword even more powerful, and promptly lost that sword to Gore the God Butcher. To pretty much do the same thing, so it kind of worked out eventually. And the head went on to become nowhere. Knull then went on to create parasites out of nothingness that became so horrified by their creator They imprisoned him on a planet that they covered, taking on the name of that prison, the Clintarians. One of those Clintarians would end up separated and experimented on before becoming Spider-Man's wardrobe upgrade and then merging with Eddie Brock to become his worst enemy, Venom. The Clintarians that had been created from Venom or had just been hanging around Earth didn't see what was so bad about Knull, so they got together and broke their people's hold on him, sending him to Earth to start his reign of terror. The prospect of Knull ruling creates an all-hands-on-deck situation with good and bad guys. Dr. Doom, Kingpin, even Dracula got in on the big push to prevent Knull from ruling. With all that power being thrown around, it created ripples in time, and for Kang, that just won't do. So she teamed up with Monica Rambeau when she was Captain Marvel and Rocket to help get the Black Knight's Ebony Blade, as it is the only weapon that can hurt Knull. Where would a discussion about Marvel heavy hitters be without at least one mention of Thanos? Like, I'm pretty sure we're legally required to mention him at least once.
You could not live with your own failure.
While both Thanos and Kang are apocalyptic threats to the existence of pretty much anyone who isn't Thanos or Kang, they have a very different approach to things. Kang skips through time in the multiverse, filling his cart with the best and most lethal bits of kit for that world-conquering power. And to defend against other Kangs, because even Kang doesn't like Kang. Thanos, on the other hand, is an Eternal from Titan with a little deviant mixed in for good measure. Add that to Death juicing his strength, and we really don't know how strong he is.
Be quick! He is very strong!
But he has waylaid some of Marvel's heaviest hitters, including Thor, the Silver Surfer, and the Hulk. Kang has been more or less perfectly happy to let the question of Brawn versus all of time go unanswered. During the Infinity Sibling story, instead of doing the toe-to-toe thing, Kang came to Thanos offering him dubious assistance. Even as powerful as Kang is, he knows that sometimes it's better to use other tools to win. Galactus may be the hungriest hungry hippo in the galaxy, but when it comes to the multiverse, there's an even hungrier hippo, Black Winter. While that sounds like a promising Norwegian heavy metal festival, it is instead a massively powerful entity that eats whole universes. He's also the answer to the question, what happened to the sixth cosmos? Black Winter ate it, and became the reason Goblin of Ta survived, to become Black Winter's herald as Galactus. Galactus was so afraid of his boss that when the Black Winter returned, he went and found Thor and juiced up the already powerful Asgardian with a heavy dose of power cosmic to help stop the coming of Black Winter. It did not work. To twist the knife even more, the Black Winter told Thor that Galactus used to be his intern. That was about it for Thor, who opened up a power cosmic tap on Galactus and then used his corpse as a bomb. Uatu had to be a wet blanket and point out that Black Winter wasn't entirely destroyed. Kang has a lot of resources, but if the Asgardian God of Thunder hopped up on the power cosmic alongside Galactus can't do it, even with Kang's bag of tricks, he might want to take a pass on any Black Winter activities. If there's one lesson in science fiction and mythology, it's whatever you create will probably try and destroy you. Celestials are actually the creation of the first firmament, the original universe who thought being empty was boring, so he created Celestials to go out and create life. They wanted life for their life forms, which meant both expansion and collapse, which sounded bonkers to the first firmament. So all the colorful Celestials got together and attacked the first firmament, and then eventually each other, destroying the first universe so hard that the next one was the first multiverse. Having learned no lessons from their own history, they then created a really powerful set of beings that lived beyond the multiverse called Omega. We call them Beyonders. They would eventually make their own creation, but they were ahead of the game this time and designed them to break stuff in the form of a molecule man in every universe to make them all go boom. Dr. Doom rigged the molecule men to do what creations do, destroy their creators. All you need to know about how much stronger a Beyonder is than Kang is in the name of the next two Avengers movies. After Kang Dynasty comes Secret Wars, and all three times that's happened, it's been a product of the Beyonders. High Evolutionary is another one of those beings determined to muck around with life itself, as if that never goes horribly wrong. He got his start as a humble biologist who leveled up a little too much. Here are some highlights. The man who would become High Evolutionary would use spider DNA to save his partner's daughter, Jessica Drew, who goes on to become Spider-Woman. And her mom would fall victim to a werewolf who most of the time is Gregor Rusoff. More on him in a minute. He got his Dr. Moreau on by making some animals human-like. Gregor Rusoff, you know, the werewolf, tries to cure his lycanthropy at Wundagore and instead releases the ancient god Chthon. The High Evolutionary didn't like this Earth, so he made his own without corruption. But then someone corrupted that. On his counter-Earth, in orbit on the other side of the sun, he took care of a cocoon with a being known as him inside leveling up. He called him Adam Warlock and sent him on his way. Between his eventual ability to evolve beings at will and his cool power suit because unethical science experiments are dangerous, he is more than a sufficient match for Kang. But let's be honest, both of these fellows would prefer the the lackey fight. While Kang can rewrite time to get better lackeys, old HE can level his guys up with his mind. Did someone say Chthon? Well, yeah, it was me. It was a moment ago. I remember it. Chthon is so old, he's a god who dates back to a time when no one thought you needed to make a rule about no eating other gods. He eventually got the boot from some powerful beings who very much would not like to be eaten, but he was able to leave a copy of the Darkhold behind in the hopes that one of those emergent life forms the other gods seemed to love so much would try to harness his power for, I don't know, say, curing lycanthropy, and then release him instead. He's not the Hannibal of old gods. It turns out that really is how you get their power. It took a team of crazy powerful beings to put him in the bottle, and he was able to boost Wanda from super sad and misusing her powers to big mad and misusing her powers all over Convertage. For Kang, Chthon is a other people's problem. Keeping secrets is hard, but some secrets the MCU does keep with the simplest method possible. Tell us there's a clue somewhere and we'll find the Mephisto in it. In the excruciating wait between Infinity War and Endgame, the Mephisto was the cosmic threat so big, it's right there in his name, Annilus. Apparently, we thought Thanos snapping half of everyone away wasn't enough. There was going to be a new villain, Annilus, because ladders look like A's. No, really, that was the reasoning. Annilus is a bug-like, immortality-obsessed ruler of the negative zone. Our world's connection to the negative zone is down to Reed Richards finding it and then using it as the rug he swept things under when he couldn't deal with them. Things like Galactus. After mooshing up the negative force and the opposing force, he teamed up with Thanos to capture Galactus, to use him as a battery to destroy all life everywhere. None of this Thanos half-steps. Drax frees the Silver Surfer frees Galactus, Galactus turns off the Annihilation Wave, it's a whole thing. Since Kang is more of an adapter and Annihilus is more of an absorbing power, he's about 10 times as strong. Take one part Bored Eternal who fights in galactic gladiatorial combat and becomes the champion of champions, and then the entire combined brain power of a dying people beamed into the champion before their planet is destroyed, and you get Overmind. With the collective consciousness of a billion people, the Bruiser gained immense psionic power as well. Already twice as strong as Kang, he can up the game using the power of his mind. It was enough that he was well on his way to defeating not only the Fantastic Four, but Dr. Doom as well. He was only defeated by a stranger named the Stranger, who had absorbed the consciousness of a few better billion beings and then shrunk him into the microverse, what we now call the Quantumverse. Without the super brain, he is already a physical match for Kang and really a bunch of other people. But with the heaping helping of consciousness bouncing around in his head, Kang would give Overmind a pass. Maybe you muck up the history instead. Pro tip, don't punish a super genius computer programmer by fusing him to a supercomputer. That was the big brain idea of the Badoon after Michael Korvac of Earth 691 betrayed his own people to the Badoon. So really, it was bad decisions all the way around. So this super genius, fused to a supercomputer, starts racking up technological superpowers, making him a formidable foe. Formidable enough for the Grandmaster to yoink him out of his reality and into 616 for a little mano-y-mano with Doctor Strange and the Defenders. He threw that fight to put a tap on the Grandmaster's power, which gave him the power to travel through both time and space. Sound familiar? He thought so. Trying to get a round 2 on Earth after the Guardians defeated him, he posed as Kang the Conqueror. Like Kang, Korvac makes the most of time and space collecting knowledge, but upping the game by tapping into Galactus' power cosmic. He has enough power that if he started to lose, he could just flip the universal table over and destroy it. The Phoenix Force is so powerful it has destroyed not one, but 2 movies. If you take the idea that a spark created reality, that spark would be embodied by the Phoenix Force. The Force is made up of all the psionic power from all of time and all of the multiverse, giving the Phoenix Force the ability to both create and destroy, which is the job of a Phoenix after all. Where life is stagnated, the Phoenix Force destroys it and puts something new in its place. Exposure to intense human emotions makes Phoenix become Dark Phoenix, which is way less discerning. The first thing the Dark Phoenix did was to supernova a star and destroy an entire people. The Phoenix Force has a raft of superpowers, but it's easier just to say it does whatever it wants, whenever it wants, including moving through time. So far, there are only 3 things that seem to be able to do much of anything to the Phoenix Force, and Kang is not one of them. Jean Grey can control it, it is vulnerable to Scarlet Witch's chaos magic, and strong emotions. Don't really play around with that last one, though. It turns out the Phoenix Force has a twin known as the Goblin Force. Where the Phoenix Force can go one way or the other when it comes to Breaking Bad, the Goblin Force was born hungry and downing galaxies only to remain hungry. Possessing Madeline Pryor and turning her into the Goblin Queen, he invaded Earth on easy mode, using his vast psionic and reality-shifting powers to make everyone fight with her instead of against her. For a second go, the Goblin Force hitched a ride on the unconscious Beyonder, adding some of that power to his full set. That would be enough to wipe out most of the heroes on Earth 1298 before Scott Summer used the Nexus of All Realities to separate the Goblin Force. Once again, Kang is not on the Goblin Force's list of weaknesses. When it gets right down to it, Kang can only really lift 5 tons, which is half of what a really sticky kid from Queens can lift. Kang's real power comes from his whole been there, done that trick. Half of the time, the grandfather paradox could do all the heavy lifting for him.